Muy buenos días, estimados hermanos y amigos. Una vez más estamos aquí con ustedes con deseo de saludarles en el nombre admirable, nombre glorioso, nombre sublime, el nombre de nuestro gran Dios y Salvador Jesucristo, el Señor. Esto es Sembrando con Fe y Esperanza. Bienvenidos.
Bringing Up Girls by Dr. James Dobson, published by Tyndale House Publishers, Carroll Stream, Illinois. And I'm James Dobson reading, and we'll begin with the dedication. This book is dedicated with great love and tenderness to my beloved daughter, Danae Dobson. She has been a joy to her mother and me since the day she was born. This intelligent, caring, creative young woman is still Daddy's little girl, and indeed, she will always hold that place in my heart. Chapter 1, The Wonderful World of Girls. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Bringing Up Boys, which sold more than 1 million copies. Ever since it was released, people on the street, in restaurants, or in airports have approached me and asked, "When are you going to write Bringing Up Girls?" My publisher has posed the same question every time we've been together. Now, even kids have begun to hound me. This scrawled letter came to my office recently. Dear Dr. James Dobson, I'm 6 years old. I have 2 older brothers. I would like to know when you're going to write Bringing Up Girls, because my mom really wants to train girls. I appreciate your work on the book. Julie. Okay, Julie, you win. I'll do it. And I thank you for the nice note. I'll bet your mom put you up to writing me, because the girl she wants to train is you. I hope to meet you someday because you sound like a very special 6-year-old. I've received thousands of other interesting letters from boys and girls, most of whom are older than Julie. Some of them have been rather angry with me because they blame me for the way their parents disciplined them. A college student sent me a poem to express that sentiment a few years ago. It read, "Roses are red and violets are blue. When I was a kid, I got spanked 'cause of you." One of my favorite letters came from a 14-year-old girl named Tiffany who was steaming when she wrote, and she came right to the point. I hate you, Dr. Dobson. I had to watch the dumbest movie today about sex. You made the movie. Ha! Like you'd know anything about it. Also, my mom has started not letting me go to movies that she has not read reviews about, thanks to your gay little plugged-in program. Now I have no social life since all my friends go to movies and see good movies, and all I can watch is Ella Enchanted. Hoop-a-dee-doo. Then Tiffany took off the gloves. She must have seen a very old picture of me wearing out-of-date glasses, which prompted this last jab. I hope you get some new glasses, because, physiologist or not, your other ones take up your whole face. Love always, Tiffany. What a sweet girl. Only a 14-year-old could start a letter declaring that she hates me and end up with assurances of eternal love. I'll bet Tiffany is a challenge for her mom and dad, but there are better days coming. The parents I'm advising today were testy kids like Tiffany when I wrote my first book on child rearing, and now something rather funny has happened. They have grown up and produced strong-willed children of their own, and they're looking for help. It's rewarding for me to watch a second generation of moms and dads learn to deal with the same issues and problems that they presented to their parents 25 years ago. Who knows, maybe I'll have an opportunity to advise a third generation when Tiffany's first baby comes along. She and other moms from her generation will see things from an entirely different perspective then. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The title I've chosen for this book, Bringing Up Girls, makes a fundamental assertion. It assumes that parents have the responsibility of not simply overseeing the growth and development of their girls and boys, but of raising them purposely, building into them certain qualities and traits of character. Wise King Solomon addressed that obligation more than 2,900 years ago when he wrote, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old he will not depart from it." That's Proverbs 22:6. The Apostle Paul added another dimension when he said, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." Ephesians 6:4. Think for a moment about the implications of these scriptures. Do they mean that a child should be taught to revere God and His Son, Jesus Christ, and to understand the spiritual dimension of life? Yes, that is their first and most important meaning. But I believe they instruct us to do more than that. Children are a gift from God, and we are stewards of their welfare. Training up our daughters in this sense implies helping them to navigate the cultural minefields that lie in their paths, teaching them eternal values, talents, and perspectives. It means instilling within them an appreciation for truthfulness, trustworthiness, self-discipline, self-control, generosity, and a sweetness of spirit. It means teaching them modesty, morality, and manners. It means helping them overcome the natural inclinations towards selfishness, aggressiveness, violence, and slovenliness. It means teaching them to work and learn and think. That's just the beginning, which is why parenthood is such a daunting responsibility, requiring careful forethought and planning. This is what we'll be talking about in the discussion that follows. The passion I feel for the subject at hand is related to the daughter who still calls me Dad. She's grown now, but I love her like I did when we were first introduced in the delivery room. Something electric occurred between us on that mystical night, and it endures today. When Danae was 3 years old, I was a professor of pediatrics at a medical school and a researcher at a large children's hospital. 5 days a week, as I prepared for my long commute through Los Angeles traffic, Danae would cry. She didn't want me to go. I always gave her a big hug, and I promised to hurry home that afternoon. But she was heartbroken. I can still see this precious kid standing in the doorway crying. Danae was particularly upset one morning as I explained again why Daddy had to go to work. Her beautiful blue eyes welled up with tears, and she said sorrowfully, "It's all right, Daddy. I forgive you." I asked my daughter a few weeks ago if she remembered those days. She has a remarkably vivid memory of her childhood, which is almost scary at times. She not only remembered her tears on the morning I was describing, but she recalled something that I had forgotten. One day when she was 3, she and her mother came to the front yard to wave at me as I drove away. I had already backed out of the driveway, however, and I didn't see them standing there. Danae recalls that she sobbed in disappointment. But when I was a long block away, I happened to catch a glimpse of my little family in my rearview mirror. They were still frantically waving goodbye. As I was going around the corner, I put my arm out the window and I waved in return. Even after all these years, Danae remembers the excitement she felt at that moment when her daddy saw her and returned her wave. How could I, and indeed, how could we, allow ourselves to get so busy with the cares of life that we would neglect our vulnerable little boys and girls and leave them unprotected from evil influences? How could we fail to give them the love and attention they crave? And how could we send them into a dangerous world without laying a secure foundation to hold them steady? No other priority comes close to this responsibility to raise our children, as Solomon said, in the way they should go. That's where we're headed. We will be discussing information and approaches, answers, solutions, and recommendations that have stood the test of time. Our focus will be on the influence of mothers and fathers, teachers and peers. We'll deal with girls of all ages, from babyhood to adulthood, and we'll consider the landmines that surely lie ahead. We'll talk about teaching girls to be ladies. We'll discuss the search for self-worth, sexual awakening, single parenting, emotional development, and the how-tos of raising girls. And, of course, we'll deal with puberty, adolescence, and the obsession with beauty. Ultimately, we'll talk about spiritual training at home and why moral purity must be taught from the preschool years to the empty nest. And therein lies our hope. There is so much to be said here. More than 3,000 pages of research and reference material have been accumulated in preparation for this book. It is my 33rd and has taken me more than 3 years to complete. What took me so long was trying to decide what to leave out. Everything seemed significant to me. What I'll share with you, moms and dads, has become my obsession. I get a lump in my throat when I think about these precious kids who know so little about life, and I worry about how we can protect their innocence and preserve the joys of childhood. We'll talk about all that and much more as we explore this fascinating subject of girls. Chapter 2, Girls in Peril. The research supporting my earlier book, Bringing Up Boys, showed unequivocally that boys were in serious trouble on many fronts. From preschool to adulthood, they were doing poorly on almost every measure of emotional, educational, and physical health. Boys were 2 times more likely than girls to have learning disabilities, 3 times more likely to be registered drug addicts, and 4 times more likely to be emotionally disturbed. They were at greater risk for schizophrenia, autism, sexual addiction, alcoholism, and all forms of antisocial and criminal behavior. They were 10 times more likely to commit murder, and their rate of death in car accidents was greater by 50%. 77% of delinquency-related court cases involve males. There's every reason to believe that boys generally continue to flounder today. Compared to girls, they have serious liabilities in school. There's hardly a place anywhere in the world where they can read better than girls on average. Here in the United States, boys are outnumbered 124 to 100 in advanced placement courses. According to sociologist Andrew Hacker, 3 out of 4 girls who are seniors in high school report spending an hour or more on homework per day, compared with only half of the boys. As might be expected from these statistics, fewer boys attend and graduate from college today. 59% of all master's degree candidates are women, and the percentage of men in graduate-level professional education is shrinking every year. When 8th grade students are asked about their future aspirations, girls are twice as likely to say they intend to pursue a career in management, the professions, or business. Boys, by contrast, often don't know what they want. I've found that even in the latter years of high school, they are less inclined to set goals or consider working hard enough to achieve them. This lack of academic motivation in many boys carries major implications for girls and women. Already, professional women are finding a shortage of men of comparable education available for possible marriage. Someone has said with a smile, there are so many Cinderellas and so few princes. Males and females have been designed for one another, and they are interdependent in countless ways. Anything that affects one sex is certain to influence the other, both positively and negatively. And that's why the war between the sexes, which has continued at a fever pitch for nearly 40 years, is so unfortunate and foolish. Well, that brings us to the subject of girls. How healthy are they emotionally and physically? Although our daughters are doing rather well academically and on some measures of social and personal health, I have to tell you that in many ways I am even more concerned about girls than boys. So much has changed for the worse in recent years. Girls are under enormous pressures rarely experienced by their mothers, grandmothers, and women in previous generations. Today's little girls are being enticed to grow up too fast and are encountering challenges for which they are totally unprepared. Now, that's a generalization with many exceptions, of course, but far too many females are in trouble. Their turmoil is evident within an array of behaviors that make no sense to family members, friends, and onlookers. For example, a rising incidence of eating disorders, including anorexia and bulimia, are besieging the young. This obsession with extreme thinness has swept through Western nations like a viral epidemic. Although it has numerous and complex psychological causes, it is driven primarily by a fear of being fat or even chubby during the childhood and adolescent years. 90% of those affected are girls, beginning as early as 5 or 6 years of age. Imagine that. Some of the tiny anorexics are still in kindergarten. According to the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, 40% of 9 and 10-year-old girls have attempted to lose weight. Never before have children been so preoccupied with the shapes of their bodies. Eventually, 1/3 of these girls will turn to dangerous methods of losing weight, such as diet pills and laxatives, vomiting, fasting, and extreme exercise. By the time they're 15, more than 60% will be using these harmful substances and methods. We'll talk in upcoming chapters about how this fear of obesity often leads to anorexia, bulimia, and other maladies. There are other serious concerns for middle and high school students, some of whom are cutting and mutilating themselves and piercing their tongues and lips and noses, eyebrows, ears, navels, nipples, and private parts with spikes and rings. Some try to symbolize darkness and death in their fashion choices and bodily adornment. Others are involved in sexual aggression, drugs and alcohol, bullying, deceit, and rebellion at home and in school. Helping to promote some of this dangerous and antisocial behavior is an array of, quote, bad girls, unquote, on parade throughout the culture. They are pop icons, starlets, and American idols who are highly influential among teens. Although the in crowd is constantly changing, today's superstars include Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and numerous other sexpots who help to warp this generation of young girls. The most brazen among them don't wear undergarments at times and have even allowed themselves to be photographed by the paparazzi from strategic angles. Another of the bad girls is Angelina Jolie, who said in an interview with the German women's magazine Das Neue, and I quote, "I doubt that fidelity is absolutely essential for a relationship. It's worse to leave your partner and talk badly about him afterwards. Neither Brad nor I have ever claimed that living together means to be chained together. We make sure that we never restrict each other." Never restrict each other? I guess that means Angelina and Brad sleep with whomever they please and expect their relationship to be unaffected by it. Time will reveal that they are tragically wrong. The unfortunate fact is that these brash superstars have become role models for millions of girls. They lead vulnerable wannabes to despise the way they look. How can awkward, newly minted teenagers with braces and acne measure up to the perceived standard of perfection? Obviously, most cannot. So they hate themselves for what they are and what they can never be. A growing number of today's kids are also binge drinking, according to the Center on Alcohol Marketing and Youth at Georgetown University. In one specific 6-month period, 31% of girls drank liquor as compared with 19% of boys. Though the numbers are smaller, there's a disturbing trend for teen girls to strip off their clothes for money. Prostitution is related to that behavior, of course, and appears to be spreading. Those involved in sex for hire are getting younger, and they tend to be middle class. The majority of them are not runaways or, quote, lost kids, unquote. They are ordinary teens looking for attention, adventure, money, and a way to fill the void inside. Columnist Steve Lopez reflected on the implications of these and other burgeoning concerns about girls in a column published in the Los Angeles Times entitled "A Scary Time to Raise a Daughter." He wrote, 3 months ago, with my wife's contractions getting closer and closer, we flicked on the TV as a distraction before going to the hospital. Bad idea. No one expects a great deal of enlightenment from the tube these days, but as we switch from one tawdry and vapid reality or dating show to another, I wondered if we should have our heads examined for bringing a child into this world, especially a girl. It's not just television that scares me, it's the internet, pop music, radio, advertising. The most lurid elements of each medium now dominate pop culture, and the incessant pounding message, directed primarily at young people, is that it's all about sex. Sure, some of us boomers had our flower child days of free love, but that was a social revolution, not a corporate-driven campaign. Today, if you haven't just had sex, you're a loser. If you don't expect to have it in the immediate future, try plastic surgery, because sex appeal, the one true standard of human achievement, is the only thing worth aspiring to. Yes, I'll admit it. I'm frazzled about all this because I have a baby girl. Each day I feel a little more like Dan Quayle, who was once ridiculed for wagging a finger at television's Murphy Brown, an unwed mom. Where's Dan Quayle when you need him? Steve Lopez is right. Like their brothers, many girls are being victimized by cultural influences that are increasingly more violent, hypersexualized, and spiritually impoverished. And this is the key. Our society is at war with good parents who are trying desperately to protect their kids from the harmful forces swirling around them. Let me ask some rhetorical questions to those of you who are raising girls. Do you hope your daughters will be sexually promiscuous even from their early teen years? Certainly not, I can almost hear most of you saying. But indulge me for the purpose of illustration. Do you prefer that your girls be brash, loud, and aggressive in their relationship with males? Do you hope they will be easy marks for boys seeking sexual conquest? Is it your desire that they imitate rogue masculine behavior, such as being quick-tempered, immodest, insensitive, and disrespectful of others? Do you want them to be foul-mouthed, crude, rude, profane, and discourteous? Is it your desire that they dress provocatively in order to attract the attention of guys, revealing more than they conceal? When they become teenagers, do you want them to look like prostitutes, pumping up their lips with collagen and their breasts with silicone? Would you like them to dangle rings from their body parts and dye their hair green, orange, purple, and pink? Do you want them to be so ashamed of their bodies that they will feel compelled to diet at 9 years of age and are afraid to eat by 13? Are you comfortable with professors who will encourage your nearly grown daughters to experiment with lesbian relationships and tell them that bisexuality is an even greater trip? Do you hope that your girls will learn that marriage is an outdated institution that should be redefined or discarded? Do you want them to disdain the cherished spiritual beliefs you have been teaching them since they were babies? If these are your aspirations for your vulnerable little girls, and I'm sure they're not, then you need to do nothing to achieve them. The popular culture will do the job for you. It is designed to turn this generation of kids into politically correct little MTV clones. The influence of the entertainment industry, Madison Avenue, the internet, hip-hop musicians, and public schools, liberal universities, and other institutions are shaping and warping youngsters and infusing them with harmful ideas that will rob them of the innocence of childhood. As a result, some of our girls will lose their prospects of having a productive and happy life. The stability of their future families, if they marry or if they cohabitate, is hanging in the balance. This is what lies in the paths of children whose parents are overworked, distracted, exhausted, and uninvolved. Without their care and concern, the culture will take them to hell. I have witnessed it 1,000 times. Even with proper parental supervision, many of our kids are on the bubble. I am most concerned about the children among us who are chronically lonely. Their parents are gone much of the time, leaving them to fend for themselves. Human beings desperately need each other, and those who are isolated do not thrive. Not only do lonely children tend to get into trouble, they also become sitting ducks for abusers who understand their emptiness and use it for their own purposes. One thing is certain. Your children are being targeted by businesses that are willing to exploit them for quick profits. Is there any doubt that the pornography industry wants to sell salacious and perverse images to curious adolescents, regardless of where that exposure leads? The dirty old men and women who sell this stuff don't wait for customers to come knocking on the door. They go out looking for them. According to former Attorney General John Ashcroft, 9 out of 10 girls have been exposed to pornographic images. Those who stumble across this wretched stuff on the web or in the media are highly susceptible to what they see. Boys as young as 13 are easily trapped into addictive and progressive behavior that will plague them for a lifetime. Girls are directly affected because their boyfriends expect them to imitate what is depicted in obscene products. A myriad of other businesses are also seeking to manipulate girls. Mattel Incorporated, for example, released a sexy little doll called My Scene, My Bling Bling Chelsea Doll. Critics called it Hooker Barbie. Not only are toys becoming sexier, they're also undergoing something called age compression. It used to be that girls from 6 to 10 were the prime market for Barbie and other dress-up dolls. Nowadays, Barbie is targeted at 3 to 5-year-olds. As Stacy Weiner wrote, it's, quote, goodbye to girlhood, end quote. Writer Bruce Kluger commented, quote, you've come a long way, Raggedy Ann, end quote. Child development experts warn that parents could be baiting pedophiles by dressing their daughters as raunchy women. The American Psychological Association, the APA, warns that sexualizing children leads to 3 of the most common mental health problems among girls and women: eating disorders, low self-esteem, and depression. Does the APA really have to convince moms and dads that making their 6-year-olds into sex bots is just plain stupid? The unanswered question at this point is, where are the parents? 5-year-old girls certainly can't buy thongs or jewel-encrusted underwear or dolls that look like little prostitutes. Their parents have to be forking out the cash. Sales receipts from a few years back indicated that parents of girls between 7 and 12 spent $1.6 million on thong underwear. I fear that many adults who ought to know better have abdicated their responsibility to guide their precious children. It should not surprise us that many teen girls who have been raised in the sexual idiocy of the 21st century have made adolescent promiscuity a way of life, and most of them are lost, hopelessly lost. Michelle Malkin, one of my favorite columnists and television commentators, is urging us to recognize what's happening to our children. She wrote, as a mother of a 4-year-old girl and an 8-month-old boy, I am increasingly dismayed by the liberal assault on decency, the normalization of promiscuity, and the mainstream media's role as shameless collaborators. You would think that it's normal to dress up in Little Miss Hooters outfits at 5 years old, to wear sex bracelets and discuss oral sex at 10, to flash your breasts for the cameras at 15, to get paid for sex at 20, to keep Excel spreadsheets of sexual conquest, and to use abortion as birth control until menopause. When conservative women say, have some self-respect, liberals in the media call us self-righteous. When conservative women say promiscuity is degrading and self-destructive, liberals in the media call us prudes. When liberal women raise their voices, they are praised as passionate. When conservative women raise their voices, we are condemned as shrill. Malkin continued with this advice for parents: be prudes, be rude, be shrill, and never, ever feel ashamed for asking out loud, have you no shame? Obviously, the culture has our children in its crosshairs, and either we can go with the flow or we can fight back with all our resources. Heaven help our kids if we remain passive and disconnected. I hope you understand now why I'm so concerned about girls. They are at maximal risk today. They are tender and more easily wounded than their brothers, and politically correct or not, I maintain that their inherent emotional nature makes them more easily manipulated. A longing for love and connectedness lies deep within their feminine souls. This is why they open themselves without commitment to guys who might, given a miracle, give them the affirmation they crave. They don't seem to get much pleasure out of the perverse acts they perform. They're hoping against hope that some adolescent boy out there will fill a void and ease the ache inside. And increasingly, those unmet needs are created by something missing in the girl's relationship with her mother and or father. Usually, it is the father, and we'll delve more into that matter in depth momentarily. For now, parents, this is the world in which your kids are growing up. Not all of them have succumbed to the temptations and pressures that I've described, of course, and I will soon share with you some very encouraging trends that are beginning to emerge. Nevertheless, the forces that are enticing the younger generation are still having their tragic impact. Our children desperately need us to guide their steps and set reasonable boundaries to protect them. They remind me of little bunny rabbits running through the meadow, unaware that owls and coyotes and bears and hawks are out there trying to catch them and tear them apart. At times it seems as though every predator in the field is after those same vulnerable little creatures. You, Mom and Dad, are their only defenders. Your public school can't be counted on to do what is clearly your responsibility. Not even your church can save them. The clergy is trying to counter a culture much farther gone into moral decline than the world into which we were born. Even meeting together with teens on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights is helpful, but it's not enough. You, however, can provide the care and guidance that's needed. And most importantly, you can fill the void that will otherwise send your bright-eyed kids into the meadow in a desperate search for nurturance and the warm company of other lost bunnies. Together, perhaps, we can protect some of today's children and teens from the dangers that I've described. But first, I want to talk to you more about those delightful little creatures we call girls. Chapter 3, The Fair Sex. Let's extend our journey further now into the wonderful and complex world of girls. Every one of them is beautiful, precious, and unique. I wish I had about a dozen granddaughters like the little ladies whose pictures grace the cover design of this book. By the way, wouldn't you like to know what secret is being shared between the giggly little girls shown on the front cover? I bet it would make us smile. I love the way God created girls, romanticized in a classic song written by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe for the movie Gigi. It contains these lyrics. Thank heaven for little girls get bigger every day. Thank heaven for little girls. They grow up in the most delightful way. Indeed they do. Boys are treasures too, of course. I spent 3 years writing about their uniqueness and what makes them tick. But the female of the species captures our hearts in a different way. It is their sensitivity and tenderness that are so charming. They feel everything intensely and make a habit of hugging those they love. Let's talk about the soft, feminine nature of girls and explore why and how parents should respond in accordance with it. First, I need to acknowledge that girls not only possess a compassionate and gentle spirit, but they can also be catty, rebellious, and downright brutal to their peers. All of us as human beings, both males and females, are capable of exhibiting the best and the worst of characteristics. Those polar opposites coexist within people of all ages, and no one is free from the dark side. It would be naive to claim otherwise. It is why we need a Savior, because, quote, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, end quote. Romans 3:23. Nevertheless, the Creator has placed within the fair sex a winsome and caring nature that should be recognized and cultivated. Gratifying and protecting it during the formative years is like pouring cool water at the base of a delicate flower. Grown-up girls need careful nurturing, too. A popular love song written in the 1930s by Irving King and Harry M. Woods offers valuable counsel to men about dealing with women. It's called Try a Little Tenderness and was later recorded by Frank Sinatra and many other vocalists. The lyrics convey this romantic advice. She may be weary, women do get weary, wearing the same shabby dress. And when she's weary, try a little tenderness. She may be waiting, just anticipating, things she may never possess. But while she's without them, try a little tenderness. Irving King clearly knew a thing or two about women, but I wonder if he observed similar characteristics in little girls. I certainly have. When my daughter was young, we took a long car trip and made many pit stops along the way. You can be sure of that. While I was pumping fuel at one of the gas stations, a little stray dog came wiggling over to our car and became our friend. Danae instantly fell in love with this homeless mutt that was begging to go along with us. We had to leave him behind, of course, and I shooed him away so I could shut the door. This little fellow stood looking up at us forlornly, as though he were thinking, "I know, you don't want me, and no one else does either." Then he followed our car as we drove away, running down the highway after us. It was a sad moment for all of us, especially for Danae. She was crushed. She sobbed inconsolably and said, "Daddy, you have to go back. He doesn't have anyone to care for him. Turn around. You have to go get him. We can't just leave him back there alone. Who'll feed him tonight? Please, Daddy, go back." Her tears fell like rain. I wish I could tell you that we returned to pick up the little dog and that he was our pet forevermore. That didn't happen. Though we are all dog lovers in our family, there are times when a mom and dad have to make the hard decisions. We just couldn't take an animal with us on our trip, staying in hotels and parking our car in the hot sun. Besides, we already had a much-loved dog that we had rescued from an animal shelter. For Danae, however, her sorrow overrode all counter-arguments. She couldn't stop crying. Our daughter never forgot that dog. She could tell you about him to this day. And she never completely forgave me for driving away from the lonely pup. In fact, I let her read this just-written story over dinner last night, and a cloud came across her face. She said, "You really should have gone back, Dad. You could have made it work." She's still half-ticked over my decision. Those of you who don't like dogs will not understand the way Danae feels about things, but I do. She has a very tender spirit, and I wouldn't have her be any other way. It's why she has been Daddy's girl since she was born. It also explains why she regularly visits lonely elderly people who languish in nursing homes. She genuinely cares for them, which makes me very proud of her. Danae's compassionate and gentle temperament is not unusual among members of her gender, although it's more pronounced in some girls than others. You will see in the next chapter why girls are typically more sensitive, perceptive, and relational than boys. These are among the characteristics that draw men to women, although guys usually don't understand them very well. It's also why girls and women are easily hurt and given to self-doubt. Beginning in puberty and lasting throughout life, girls and women often struggle with recurring crises of confidence. Some never fully overcome them. I know it's politically incorrect to say that, but the truth is the truth. One of my early books was entitled What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. It was based on surveys I administered initially to 75 women and then to 5,000 more. I shared with them 10 common sources of depression that I had heard in my counseling as follows: problems with the children, menstrual and other physiological difficulties, financial stresses, in-law conflict, sexual problems, absence of romantic love and marriage, low self-esteem, fatigue and time pressure, loneliness, isolation, and boredom, and aging. Then I asked the women to rank order these items in their own lives. The study was not intended to meet the rigors of the scientific method because the sample was not randomized and had no control group. Nevertheless, the results were very interesting and revealing. The most frequent source of depression among these women was low self-esteem. More than 50% listed it in first place, and 80% marked it in the top 5. The 75 women who served as the test group were young, attractive, and married. All were mothers with young children and lived in upscale neighborhoods. Most had college degrees and were members of strong Christian churches. Nevertheless, almost all of them reportedly dealt with recurring bouts of depression and flagging confidence. When I administered the short questionnaire to 5,000 more women, my initial findings were confirmed. It's my conclusion, based on these and other more rigorous studies, that the sensitivity of which I have written has a downside. Adolescent girls and women are more easily wounded than males, and many of them experience a lifelong sense of inadequacy. The pain that results from being ridiculed, bullied, or left out as a child or teen, as well as wounds originating from dysfunctional families, is remembered painfully thereafter. I served as a school psychologist before moving into academia, and I saw evidence of this vulnerability in most of our female students. They didn't feel pretty enough or accepted by their peers. They just weren't valuable in their own eyes. Here are some examples of that common pattern in highly successful women. Chris Evert is the former #1 tennis player in the world. She was cute and perky and everyone's little sweetheart when she made her stunning debut into the sport at 16 years of age. There was no prize in tennis that she didn't eventually win, and yet this is what she said of herself. Quote, "I had no idea who I was or what I could be away from tennis. I was depressed and afraid because so much of my life had been defined by my being a tennis champion. I was completely lost. Winning made me feel like I was somebody. It made me feel pretty. It was like being hooked on a drug. I needed the wins, the applause, in order to have an identity." Provocative singer and perennial star of stage and screen, Madonna, describes herself in similar terms. She said, "I have an iron will, and all of my will has always been devoted to conquering some horrible feelings of inadequacy. I'm always struggling with that fear. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being of worth, and then I get to another stage and I think I'm mediocre and uninteresting and worthless, and I have to find a way to get myself out of that again and again. My drive in life is from this horrible feeling of being inadequate and mediocre, and it is always pushing me and pushing me and pushing me, because even though I have become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. My struggle has never ended, and it probably never will." Oprah Winfrey has been the most successful woman in television for more than 25 years. Millions of viewers have tuned into her talk show every day and have been influenced by what she has to say. She is also one of the wealthiest women in the world. This, however, is how she sees herself. She said, "I discovered I didn't feel I was worth an expletive, and certainly not worthy of love, unless I was accomplishing something. I suddenly realized I have never felt I could be loved just for being." Melissa Gilbert played the role of Half-Pint Laura for many years on the popular television series Little House on the Prairie. But the story of her adult years is sad because she chose her career over every other aspect of life. A series of broken relationships attest to the fact that what we see on television is often a facade. An article in TV Guide revealed this dark side to her story. Gilbert, who was 30 years old at the time, said she faced the stark realization that the path she had chosen betrayed her. She said, "Didn't I tell you what my greatest fear is? That they'll write on my tombstone, 'She had an incredible career, but no life.'" Joan Kennedy, former wife of Senator Ted Kennedy, was one of the most glamorous women in the world. She was a model who could turn the heads of every guy in the room. I was one of them. I saw her and the senator at close range in 1968 at an American Academy of Pediatrics conference in Chicago. They both sparkled with beauty and charm, but Joan hardly perceived herself in that light. During the 1980 presidential campaign, she began seeing a psychiatrist regularly. She said, "I had really lost my self-confidence. The only thing I knew that I was sure of was that I was a very attractive young woman and that I had a pretty good figure." She said, "The Kennedys are so good at everything, and I'm a flop." When hearing reports that Teddy was a womanizer, she said, "That went to the core of my self-esteem. I began thinking maybe I'm just not attractive enough or attractive anymore or whatever, and it was awfully easy to then say, if that's the way it is, I might as well have a drink." Joan soon became an alcoholic. There's no end to the examples I could cite of admired, respected, and gorgeous women, from Ava Gardner to Marilyn Monroe, who were never entirely comfortable in their own skin. Alas, the problem even showed up in my own home. I was shocked to learn shortly after I married Shirley that she had the same feelings of inadequacy. She had been Miss Everything in college, homecoming queen, most outstanding junior girl, senior class president, who's who among students in American colleges and universities, and one of the most popular girls in school. She was beautiful, and she had guys pursuing her from the time she arrived as a freshman. Everybody loved Shirley, and so did I. Yet I discovered during our first year of marriage that she harbored secret doubts about herself that she had concealed from me during our 3-year courtship. The fact that Shirley disliked herself made absolutely no sense to me. I understood that some of her feelings came from being the daughter of an alcoholic and growing up in a poor neighborhood, but those influences lingered long after she had moved away from home. Nevertheless, those feelings of inadequacy were real, and because I loved her, I needed to help her deal with them. I went to work to repair the damage. Shirley has completely recovered now and is, I think, one of the most respected Christian women in the country. I've seen her confidently step to a podium facing an audience of 16,000 men and women. But as I discovered in my wife, the phenomenon of low self-worth can be irrational and is not always linked to obvious causes. To some degree, it is every woman, and it begins in childhood. John and Stacy Eldridge described this nature in their book entitled Captivating, Unveiling the Mystery of a Woman's Soul. They wrote, "You see, every little girl and every little boy is asking one fundamental question, but they're very different questions depending on whether you are a little boy or a little girl. Little boys want to know, do I have what it takes? All that rough and tumble, all that daring and superhero dress-up, all of that is a boy seeking to prove that he does have what it takes. He was made in the image of a warrior god. Nearly all a man does is fueled by his search for validation, that longing he carries for an answer to his question. Little girls want to know, am I lovely? The twirling skirts, the dress-up, the longing to be pretty and to be seen, that is what it's all about. We are seeking an answer to our question. When I was a girl of maybe 5 years old, I remember standing on top of the coffee table in my grandparents' living room and singing my heart out. I wanted to capture attention, especially my father's attention. I wanted to be captivating. We all did. But for most of us, the answer to our question when we were young was, no, there is nothing captivating about you. Get off the coffee table. Nearly all a woman does in her adult life is fueled by her longing to be delighted in, her longing to be beautiful, to be irreplaceable, and to have her question answered yes. And down in the depths of our hearts, our question remains unanswered. Or rather, it remains answered in a way that is answered so badly in our youth. Am I lovely? Do you see me? Do you want to see me? Are you captivated by what you find in me? We live haunted by that question, yet unaware that it still needs an answer. Some of my readers are undoubtedly asking, well, what can we as parents do about this unanswered question within our daughters? How can we raise them to be confident women? Is there a way to preserve their softness and femininity while strengthening their sense of personhood too? I believe there are many approaches to instilling healthy self-worth in girls, but it begins with the security of a loving family. Specifically, it depends on a caring and affirming father. Moms are vital in countless ways too, but self-worth for girls hangs precariously on their relationship with their dads. That understanding is spelled out in another wonderful book that I hope you'll buy and read, after you finish reading mine, of course. It was written by pediatrician Meg Meeker and is entitled Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. Here is what Dr. Meeker writes about the way girls are made. I have watched daughters talk to fathers. When you come into the room, they change. Everything about them changes. Their eyes, their mouths, their gestures, their body language. Daughters are never lukewarm in the presence of their fathers. They might take their mothers for granted, but not you. They light up or they cry. They watch you intensely. They hang on your words. They hope for your attention, and they wait for it in frustration or in despair. They need a gesture of approval, a nod of encouragement, or even simple eye contact to let them know you care and are willing to help. When she's in your company, your daughter tries harder to excel. When you teach her, she learns more rapidly. When you guide her, she gains confidence. If you fully understood just how profoundly you can influence your daughter's life, you would be terrified, overwhelmed, or both. Boyfriends, brothers, and even husbands can't shape her character the way you do. You will influence her entire life because she gives you an authority she gives to no other man. Many fathers, particularly of teen girls, assume that they have little influence over their daughters, certainly less influence than their daughters' peers or pop culture, and think their daughters need to figure out life on their own. But your daughter faces a world markedly different from the one that you did growing up. It's less friendly, morally unmoored, and even outright dangerous. After age 6, little girl clothes are hard to find. Many outfits are cut to make her look like a seductive 13 or 14-year-old trying to attract older boys. She will enter puberty earlier than girls did a generation or two ago, and boys will be watching as she grows breasts even as young as age 9. She will see sexual innuendos or scenes of overt sexual behavior in magazines or on television before she is 10 years old, whether you approve or not. She will learn about HIV and AIDS in elementary school and will also probably learn why and how it is transmitted. You need to stop in your tracks, open your eyes wider, and see what your daughter faces today, tomorrow, and in 10 years. It's tough and it's frightening, but this is the way it is. While you want the world to be cautious and gentle with her, it is cruel beyond imagination, even before she's a teen. Even though she may not participate in ugly stuff, it's all around her. Sexual promiscuity, alcohol abuse, foul language, illegal drugs, and predatory boys and men who want to take something from her. I don't care whether you're a dentist, a truck driver, a CEO, or a school teacher, whether you live in a 10,000 square foot home in rural Connecticut or a 1,000 square foot apartment in Pittsburgh. Ugliness is everywhere. Once upon a time, ugliness was somewhat contained. Gangs, drug pushers, and the bad crowd stayed in defined pockets in certain neighborhoods and schools. No more. The ugliness is all around. You will make the difference in your daughter's life. You have to, because unfortunately, we have a popular culture that's not healthy for girls and young women, and there's only one thing that stands between it and your daughter: you. Fathers inevitably change the course of their daughters' lives and can even save them. From the moment you set eyes on her wet from the womb body until she leaves your home, the clock starts ticking. It's the clock that times your hours with her, your opportunities to influence her, to shape her character, and to help her find herself, and to enjoy living. Dr. Meeker's perspective is brilliant, including her unsettling reference to the ugliness in today's world. Indeed, the culture is cruel beyond imagination and threatens the emotional and physical health of this generation of girls. It is aimed squarely at female sexuality, beginning in early adolescence or even earlier, and continuing into adulthood. Without their fathers to protect and defend them, girls are often on their own against formidable forces. In short, the influence that dads wield for good or harm in their daughters' lives touches every dimension of life. Especially it shapes and stabilizes the girl's sense of worth and keeps alive her tender spirit. I urge all parents, but especially fathers, to work at building your daughter's self-concept throughout her childhood. Tell her she is pretty every chance you get. Hug her, Compliment her admirable traits. Build her confidence by giving her your time and attention. Defend her when she is struggling, and let her know that she has a place in your heart that is reserved only for her. She will never forget it. Mom, it's your job to bring out the best in your little girl's nature. She needs your affirmation and encouragement too. We'll talk more about your role in chapters 4 and 6. To both mothers and fathers, let me share a suggestion that you may not want to hear. Good parenting almost always requires sacrifice. Childhood lasts for only a brief moment, but it should be given priority while it is passing before your eyes. Watch your kids carefully. Think about what they're feeling and consider the influences that they're under. Then do what's best for them. Let me acknowledge that successful family life is often difficult to achieve. It's never perfect, and it's often problematic. I'm sure you have your own set of challenges as you seek to meet the needs of your children. You may be a single parent with very limited financial resources. Perhaps you suffer from illness, disability, or addiction. Or maybe you have strong-willed kids who are tough to handle. The last thing I want to do is add to your pressures or your sense of frustration. Nevertheless, if there is any way you can give priority to your children amid these limitations, even if it requires serious sacrifice, you will not regret giving it to them. This might mean staying married when your impulse is to divorce. It could cause you to make choices that will handicap you professionally. It might mean financial hardship for the family because mom is staying home with her children. It might mean giving up your 4-hour golf outing on Saturday. What I'm saying is that from where I sit today, children are worth everything that they cost us. It was this perspective that led me to walk away from my position as a professor of pediatrics at the University of Southern California School of Medicine. My responsibility in this rewarding position required me to visit 15 major medical centers across the country twice each year, taking me away from home repeatedly. When my father pointed out to me what my absence was doing to my family, I resigned so I could spend more time with my wife and kids. I admit that at first, professional accomplishment with all its perks had seemed to be like low-hanging fruit for me, and it was very sweet for a time. Honestly, I thought I was walking away from the good life when I left academia. As a hard-driving, highly motivated guy, it was often difficult for me to do, but it was the right decision. As the years unfolded, I didn't actually give up much of anything. I just found other ways to use my training and opportunities and was more fulfilled than I'd been in my other life. I thank God now that my father urged me to give priority to my family. The wonderful relationship I enjoy with our grown son and daughter today is the payoff. In summary, I hope you will find a way to give your little girls and boys the great benefits of a secure, loving home. That is the surest way to preserve the light that shines in their eyes. We're going to take a close look in the next chapter at the female brain. It's a marvel of uniqueness and design. It is impossible to understand girls without examining the physiological, neurological, hormonal, and genetic influence that make them who they are. I think you will find this discussion interesting and helpful in dealing with your daughters. About the time you get your youngsters figured out, puberty comes in like a tornado and scrambles all the rules and expectations. That's what makes the parenting task one of life's most challenging experiences. These little creatures called girls are far more complicated than their brothers. Trust me on this one. I'll close this chapter with the lyrics of a song that I love. Its title is The Hope Chest by Stephanie Bentley. Her mama bought her a hope chest to keep her dreams inside. All the precious memories, little things she'd like to hide. A magic wand, an old rag doll, some plastic pearls. 'Cause after all, a little girl is only a little girl so long. And tender hearts need their stars to wish upon. 'Cause one day you will turn around and she'll be gone. A little girl is only a little girl so long. One day when she got home from school, she slipped a little note beneath the tattered lining, and here's what she wrote. Roses are red, violets are blue. Put an X in the box if you like me too. A little girl is only a little girl so long, and tender hearts need their stars to wish upon. 'Cause one day you'll turn around and she'll be gone. A little girl is only a little girl so long. They married in the garden on a perfect July day. In a horse and carriage they waved and rode away. Mama went inside to put away her wedding dress and spotted a letter lying on the old hope chest. It said, "A little girl is only a little girl so long. Your lonely heart might need a star to wish upon, so look inside once in a while to bring the memories home. A little girl is only a little girl, and I will always be your little girl. So long."
La Iglesia Pentecostal Unida Latinoamericana en Baltimore nos estamos reuniendo en la 8301 Liberty Road, 8301 Liberty Road, Windsor Mill, Maryland 21244. Y nuestras reuniones son los días domingo a las 8 de la mañana. Domingo 8 de la mañana tenemos el servicio de adoración, alabanza y enseñanza de la palabra de Dios. Venga juntamente con su familia y allegados. Serán todos bienvenidos a nuestra reunión dominical. Recuerde, Jesucristo es el verdadero Dios y la vida eterna. Primera de Juan 5:20. Y si otros días madrugamos a buscar la comida que perece, ¿por qué no hacerlo el día domingo para buscar la comida que a vida eterna permanece? Le esperamos.